Have you ever stepped into a crowded room and felt an inexplicable weight settle over you? An unseen barrier that makes connection feel distant, even impossible? Conversations hum around you like a chorus of half-heard songs, yet none seem to strike a chord within. You force a smile, exchange pleasantries, but inside, there's a gnawing sense that you don't belong. It's not merely social discomfort. It's something deeper, an unshakable awareness that you're on a different wavelength, a quiet longing to escape from a world that demands more of you than you are willing, or perhaps even able, to give. We are told from a young age that to thrive is to engage, that connection is the lifeblood of happiness. Society paints a picture of fulfillment tied to constant interaction, shared laughter, and an endless stream of external validation. And yet, here you are, feeling drained rather than enriched by social encounters. Does that mean something is wrong with you? Far from it. The Stoics teach us that discomfort often arises when our internal values clash with external pressures. What you feel in those moments is not an aversion to people but a resistance to shallow engagement and a yearning for something deeper, something real. This tension between the self and the social world is not uncommon. The world demands conformity, to smile even when you feel empty, to engage in conversations that skim the surface when your mind craves depth. It's not that you dislike others. It's that the interactions often fail to meet the standards of meaning and authenticity you hold dear. In a society that prizes extroversion and constant interaction, choosing solitude can feel like rebellion. But perhaps rebellion is precisely what's needed, a quiet, inward act of defiance against a world that rarely stops to reflect. So, why don't you like being around people? It's not a simple aversion to social life, but a complex interplay of personality, past experiences, and philosophical reflection. In this exploration, we'll delve into the reasons behind your preference for solitude, not to label or justify it, but to honor and better understand it. After all, the Stoics remind us that self-knowledge is the foundation of a life well lived, and understanding why you withdraw from others is the first step toward mastering the art of choosing when and with whom to engage. Reason 1. The introvert's quiet strength. There is an understated strength in solitude, a kind of quiet power that many overlook. For an introvert, being alone is not a withdrawal from life. It is a deliberate return to oneself. In the stillness of solitude, the mind finds room to stretch, to reflect, and to wander through the depths of thought. Unlike the fleeting highs of shallow social exchanges, solitude offers something more profound, the opportunity for self-discovery and genuine clarity. As an introvert, your desire is not for countless interactions, but for meaningful ones. You do not seek to fill the silence with small talk or polite laughter. You crave depth, conversations that explore ideas, values, and the essence of life itself. But in a world where social interactions often prioritize breadth over depth, finding such moments can feel rare, almost impossible. Most gatherings encourage surface-level exchanges, and while others may find comfort in this, you find yourself restless, longing for something more substantial. This is not about disdain for people. It's about the longing for authentic connection in a sea of superficial engagement. There's also the matter of energy. For an introvert, social interactions can feel like emotional transactions, each one depleting a finite reservoir of inner strength. Unlike extroverts, who draw energy from the presence of others, you find that every conversation, every smile, every gesture, slowly drains your internal resources. It's not that you don't value human connection, you do. But when the cost outweighs the benefit, when the balance sheet shows more loss than gain, it's only natural to retreat. Society, however, rarely understands this. There's an unspoken expectation that one should always be outgoing, always eager to engage, to entertain, to perform. Those who prefer solitude are often seen as distant, aloof, or even antisocial. Yet, what they don't see is the rich inner world you inhabit, a world filled with ideas, reflections, and dreams as vast as galaxies. They don't see that your retreat is not an escape but a conscious act of self-preservation, a way to maintain the essence of who you are. In Stoic philosophy, self-awareness is key to living a virtuous life. The Stoics teach us to know ourselves deeply, to recognize what nurtures our well-being and what drains it. Solitude, for you, is not a sign of weakness or avoidance. It is a practice of inner alignment, a return to your core values and desires. It is where you gather strength, where you cultivate wisdom, where you reconnect with your essence. And if that makes you appear different in a world that worships extroversion, so be it. As the Stoics remind us, it is better to live in accordance with your nature than to bend to the fleeting approval of others. Choosing solitude, then, is not about avoiding people. It is about honoring yourself. It is about recognizing that in a world of constant noise, stepping back into the quiet can be the most powerful act of all. Reason 2. Trust, a fragile fortress. Trust, once shattered, is never easily rebuilt. It is a delicate fortress, constructed brick by brick through shared experiences, mutual respect, and vulnerability. But when betrayal strikes, whether from a friend who turned their back on you, a partner who betrayed your confidence, or a relative who let you down, that carefully crafted structure crumbles, leaving behind the ruins of uncertainty and fear. In a world where trust is so easily exploited, it's no wonder you hesitate to open yourself up again. This isn't paranoia, it's survival. Imagine pouring your heart into a relationship only to have your trust broken. The pain of such an experience lingers far longer than the moment of betrayal itself. It distorts your perception of connection, making every new interaction feel like walking on thin ice. You begin to question not only the intentions of others, but also your own judgment. How could you have been so blind to the signs? How can you trust yourself to discern friend from foe in the future? The Stoics remind us that wisdom is born from experience, but wisdom can also bring caution, perhaps too much caution. When trust has been repeatedly violated, your mind learns to shield itself, not out of bitterness, but as a form of self-preservation. This cautious approach can create a heightened sensitivity to subtle red flags, tones of voice, fleeting glances, or inconsistencies in behavior that others might overlook. For someone with trust issues, these cues are not trivial. They are warning signals, small cracks in the facade that can't be ignored. This vigilance becomes a burden, turning even simple interactions into complex calculations of risk and reward. You want connection? Yes, but not at the cost of exposing yourself to more pain. It's not that you've given up on people altogether. Deep down, you still long for genuine connection, the kind built on understanding, respect, and emotional safety. But the Stoics teach us to be selective in our relationships, to open our hearts only to those who have earned that privilege. Trust, in its truest form, is not something to be given freely. It must be earned through consistent actions over time. And until you find those rare individuals who prove themselves worthy of your trust, it's okay to keep your distance. It's okay to protect yourself. In a society that often pressures us to engage, to connect, and to forgive without reflection, guarding your trust can feel isolating. Yet, as Stoicism teaches, the path to inner peace is not found in bending to external expectations, but in aligning with your inner wisdom. To retreat is not to surrender. It is to choose carefully whom you allow into your life. Trust is a precious currency, and you have every right to spend it wisely. Over time, with patience and discernment, you may find those who restore your faith in human connection. Until then, choosing solitude over unsafe company is not a flaw. It is a testament to your strength, resilience, and hard-won wisdom. Reason 3. The burden of being around the wrong people. Not all company is created equal. Some people uplift you, inspire you, and leave you feeling more alive. But others do the opposite. They drain your energy, cloud your mind, and leave behind a subtle yet persistent fatigue that lingers long after they're gone. It's not that you don't want to be around people. You simply don't want to be around those people. And over time, after enduring enough draining interactions, you begin to see solitude not as a rejection of others, but as an act of self-respect. You've likely encountered them. The relentless talkers who monopolize every conversation, never once pausing to truly listen. Or perhaps the complainers, who seem to carry a storm cloud wherever they go, spreading negativity like a contagion. Even more exhausting are those whose conversations are veiled in subtle competition or disguised as support, leaving you feeling small, inadequate, or misunderstood. Spending time with such people isn't just tiring. It feels like emotional labor, a task you never signed up for but are somehow obligated to complete. Then there are the energy vampires, those whose presence seems to sap every ounce of vitality from you. They thrive on drama, conflict, and constant attention, and being around them feels like an endless cycle of giving without receiving. After enough encounters with such individuals, you begin to question whether socializing is worth the emotional toll. You're not avoiding people, you're protecting your peace. Even well-meaning people can add to this burden. Perhaps it's a friend who insists on socializing in ways that don't suit you. Loud parties when you crave quiet conversation, or large gatherings when you prefer intimate company. It's not that their intentions are bad. It's just that their way of connecting doesn't align with yours. The Stoics remind us that we must live in accordance with our nature. To constantly bend to others' preferences is to betray that nature and, ultimately, ourselves. Choosing solitude, then, isn't a rejection of human connection. It's a mindful decision to preserve your well-being. Stoicism teaches us that our time and energy are finite resources. To spend them wisely is an act of wisdom, not selfishness. When you step back from draining relationships, you create space for introspection, growth, and eventually, more meaningful connections. Solitude becomes a sanctuary where you can recover from the noise of the world and reconnect with your inner values. In a culture that often glorifies constant social engagement, choosing to be selective about your company can feel countercultural, even rebellious. But as Stoic philosophy emphasizes, true strength lies in living according to reason, not in seeking the fleeting approval of others. Surround yourself with those who respect your boundaries, who enrich your life rather than deplete it. Until you find such individuals, it's perfectly acceptable to retreat into solitude, not as an escape, but as an embrace of your own well-being and personal growth. Reason 4. The weight of low self-esteem. Sometimes, your reluctance to be around people has little to do with them and everything to do with you. Beneath the surface, there's a voice, persistent, critical, unrelenting, that whispers doubts into your mind. It tells you that you're not good enough, not interesting enough, not worthy of anyone's time. Outwardly, you may appear composed, perhaps even confident. Yet internally, there's a storm of self-doubt, churning with every social interaction, convincing you that you're walking through a minefield of potential judgment and rejection. You replay past conversations endlessly, dissecting every word, every pause, every expression. Did they find you boring? Did they notice your nervous laughter? Did you say something foolish? These thoughts spiral until the idea of socializing feels less like a chance for connection and more like stepping onto a stage without a script, unprepared, exposed, and vulnerable. And so, you begin to withdraw, not because you don't want to be around people, but because being around them feels like a constant test that you are doomed to fail. This internal dialogue, harsh and unforgiving, is a narrative you've carried for so long that it feels like truth. The Stoics, however, remind us that perception is not reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The critical voice within is merely a construct of the mind, an illusion fed by past experiences and unrealistic expectations. The world, in truth, is far less judgmental than your inner critic would have you believe. Yet low self-esteem is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you withdraw, the more disconnected you feel, and the more disconnected you feel, the harder it becomes to re-engage. It's a vicious cycle, one that keeps you trapped in a cage of your own making. But Stoic philosophy offers a way out, not through grand gestures or sudden transformations, but through small, deliberate steps towards self-mastery. Recognize that your worth is not determined by fleeting social encounters, but by your character, your actions, and your pursuit of virtue. Breaking free from this cycle begins with self-compassion. It requires acknowledging that you are not alone in feeling this way, that many others struggle with the same fears. It means giving yourself permission to take small risks, engaging in brief conversations, sharing a genuine thought, or simply being present without the need to perform. Each of these steps is an act of defiance against the false narrative of unworthiness. Ultimately, the goal is not to become immune to self-doubt, but to cultivate the resilience to face it. As the Stoics teach, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. You may always feel a degree of discomfort in social situations, but with time, patience, and self-awareness, you can learn to navigate these moments with greater ease. Until then, it's okay to step back, to prioritize your mental well-being over societal expectations. After all, true strength lies not in how others perceive you, but in how you perceive yourself. Reason 5. The silent battle of social anxiety. Social anxiety is not just an amplified form of shyness. It is a profound internal struggle, a battle fought in the mind long before any social interaction begins. Picture this. You receive an invitation to a gathering, and while the people are familiar and the atmosphere is meant to be welcoming, your mind begins its relentless whispering. What if you say something awkward? What if they notice how uncomfortable you feel? What if you have nothing interesting to contribute? By the time the event arrives, you are already mentally exhausted from rehearsing worst-case scenarios that may never happen. To someone with social anxiety, even the simplest interaction can feel like walking into a battlefield unarmed. Every glance feels like scrutiny, every silence like judgment. You become hyper-aware of your every move, how you stand, how you speak, even how you breathe. The experience becomes so overwhelming that it's easier to avoid it altogether. This isn't about a lack of desire for connection. It's about self-preservation, an instinctive retreat from what feels like a constant threat to your sense of self. The Stoics understood the nature of fear and anxiety well. They taught that much of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our perception of them. Epictetus famously said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." Social anxiety, at its core, is fueled by a distorted view of social interactions, a belief that every word, every action, is subject to harsh judgment. Yet, as the Stoics remind us, most of this judgment exists only in our minds. The reality is often far kinder than our fears would have us believe. Over time, avoidance creates a cruel paradox. The less you engage, the more alien the act of socializing becomes. Your social skills, like unused muscles, begin to atrophy, and the thought of re-engaging feels even more daunting. The result is a growing sense of isolation, a widening gap between you and the world around you. Yet the Stoic path offers hope, not through avoidance, but through gradual exposure, self-compassion, and the courage to face discomfort head-on. Overcoming social anxiety is not an overnight transformation. It is a process that requires patience and persistence. Start small. Perhaps a brief conversation, a shared smile, or even attending a gathering without the pressure to perform. Each small victory builds confidence, proving to your mind that social interaction is not the perilous ordeal it once seemed. The Stoics remind us that courage is built in increments, by choosing each day to act despite fear. Until you reach a place where socializing feels less burdensome, it's okay to prioritize your mental well-being. It's okay to retreat when necessary, to acknowledge your limits without shame. The world may urge constant engagement, but true strength lies in understanding when to step forward and when to step back. In time, with persistence and self-awareness, the grip of social anxiety can loosen, and what once felt like an insurmountable mountain may become a hill you can climb, not without effort, but with a growing sense of ease. Conclusion. At the heart of your preference for solitude lies a simple yet profound truth. It is not about avoiding people. It is about preserving your peace, protecting your energy, and honoring who you are. Whether it's the quiet need for introspection, the scars left by broken trust, the burden of draining relationships, or the silent battles with self-doubt and anxiety, each reason tells a story of resilience, self-awareness, and personal growth. Far from being a flaw, your inclination towards solitude reflects a deeper wisdom, one that resonates with ancient Stoic principles. The Stoics teach us that life is not about pleasing others or conforming to societal expectations, but about living in alignment with our true nature. Solitude, when chosen mindfully, becomes a space for introspection, creativity, and inner development. It allows you to hear your thoughts clearly, to cultivate inner strength, and to engage with the world on your own terms. The key is not to avoid people entirely, but to discern when to step forward and when to step back, always keeping your well-being at the center of your decisions. As you continue on this journey of self-discovery, remember that you are not alone in feeling this way. Many who walk the path of personal growth, who seek deeper meaning in life, face the same struggles. Embrace solitude not as isolation, but as an opportunity for transformation. A quiet act of rebellion against a world that often values noise over depth. If this message resonated with you and you find strength in these ideas, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel. Here, we explore Stoicism, ancient philosophy, and practical wisdom for personal growth. Together, we can cultivate a mindset rooted in resilience, purpose, and inner peace. Let's walk this path of self-mastery, learning not only to live, but to live well.